we have more intercepted phone calls coming to us from Russia. And it sounds like the spouses of service members are really getting tired of the Kremlin's BS. Does it portend to something worse? What is in store for Russian conscripts? Let's get into it. Okay, first, guys, this is obviously coming to us from Insight from Ukraine and Russia. His channel is great. I linked to it in the description. I only cover a fraction of his videos, but you guys should definitely check out his whole collection of all of these intercepts. They're all really interesting, and they're insight into the conflict that you can't get anywhere else.
Right now, you're gonna hear a one-sided intercepted phone call with Russian wife reacting to her husband, telling her the news that he's not returning home because he's been forced to sign a military contract. Let's listen to it.
Короче, получается, вас не демобилизуют, а будут контракты подсовывать.
The wife says, come on. So it turns out they won't demobilize you, but they'll be offering contracts, right?
Вот.
She says, these MFers are unbelievable. What do you do in that situation? Either sign or... She says, Yor, I think his name is Yuri. If you sign, that's it. They'll screw you over anyway. Yeah, this is one of those things that... So every military, because of the fundamental nature of how militaries work, they can't be subject to the same sort of employment conditions as regular Joe Blow employment. For example, there's this whole separate military justice system in the U.S. military called the Uniform Code of Military Justice. And while much of it looks very similar, for example, serious crimes, you'll be tried by a jury of your peers. In a lot of cases, you also have the addition of crimes that are unique to the military. For example, misbehavior before the enemy is a crime. Failure to follow orders is a crime. Imagine, for example, if your boss told you clean the sink and you didn't clean the sink, and then you were charged with a crime. Well, in the military, you can be, because while sometimes the military orders are clean the sink, in instances, for example, in one instance in Afghanistan, we told a soldier, hey, you're responsible for manning the turret in an MRAP that has a thermal camera. And so you are sort of the night vision for this portion of our FOB. And the soldier fell asleep manning the turret. Because he had failed to follow instructions, right, we gave him an Article 15, the equivalent of not quite a traffic ticket, more like maybe the military version of like your first time DUI. So the point is that because the stakes are different, the rules are also different in every military. But that said, there are some things that are not different. And again, forcing someone to sign a contract, that is pretty egregious, especially if you're talking about extending troop service. But this isn't the first time we've heard Russian forces playing fast and loose with these contracts.
Подпишешь, все это. Тебя так и так делают. Вот, а ты говорил, демобилизация, типа отпустят, не отпускают. Да не буду. Я почему-то уверена, что не отпустят. Не отпустят они вас. Ну, я, конечно, верю в лучшее, но, блин, Юра, готовься к худшему, серьезно. Потому что сейчас вот эти все законы, сейчас закон, он вообще вышел.
Right, and so, okay, so this woman is saying that they'll screw you either way. I heard that demobilization was happening and they'd let you go, but they're not releasing anyone. They won't for some reason. She says, I'm sure they won't. They won't release you guys at all. I want to believe in the best, but Yodi, you should be prepared for the worst, she says, because now these laws have come out that if you have some rank, they can call you up until you're 60. And this is another classic example of the way that sort of the legal system without an independent judiciary, the legal system is just it exists only to punish or only to extract from those who don't have the power, prestige, or authority to leverage it or exert it, right? Look at Prigozhin, right? It's illegal for a Russian to criticize the military operation or to denigrate the military. But Prigozhin did so blatantly, flagrantly, culminating in him driving up to Moscow, shooting down Russian combat aircraft and demanding the surrender of the government in Moscow. And he still just got told to go to Belarus. And the reason I say that is because the Prigozhin can get away with it because he has money, he has connections, and he has power, right? That is when those are the things that decide the outcome of a legal challenge or a political challenge, then what you have isn't a truly representative system. It isn't truly a fair system. It is simply a mechanic, right? There's a legal system that can sometimes offer a just outcome. So, for example, if I had a claim, I said the government screwed me. Let's say I said I signed a contract to cut all the grass at the federal courthouse, and they haven't paid me. I could go to a judge, and a judge could compel the federal government to pay me. That's a realistic outcome, even for just me. Now, I would need a lawyer. I'd need to pay that lawyer, right? It's not like it's free, but there's a reasonable chance that a regular person with a regular lawyer can at least have a fighting chance. In the Russian system, right, that's just not the case. The legal system is just a series of levers and pulleys for the people in power, the Kremlin, to extract and exert their will on the people who don't have it. And again, you see here where they play these games where like, well, you've been mobilized, but now you're a contract soldier. Well, you were forced to sign it, or they forged your signature. And then they sit there and go, oh, well, even if you leave for demobilization, you'll just be called back up because you have military experience. So it's a sort of backdoor draft-like effect. But again, is there a legal recourse? Not really.
Типа, если какое-то звание до 60 лет могут призвать, то даже мой папа подходит, потому что он,
She says, even my dad is eligible for conscription because he's former military.
Юр, потому что это утилизация, Юр.
She says it's disposal. They're disposing of us. They don't need people.
Это утилизация. Они утилизируют. Не нужны люди. Мы просто как мясо для них. Вот и все. Да, там, конечно, бабки еще играют роль.
Interesting. So she says you're just like meat to them. That's it. Yes, of course, money plays a role there too, but they also have plans to dispose of as many people as possible. This is really interesting because we've seen in some of those Russian civilian on the street interviews, we've seen them roll out some conspiracy theories that don't look different than this. And the depopulation, sometimes it's called like a depopulation agenda, or for a while it was being rolled out as the Great Reset. But it's this idea that elites in the government, whatever government, believe that there is too many people and that their population needs to be reduced, and that there's a series of events that are orchestrated by this secret cabal to reduce the population. Again, it is much more likely that Russia is following the exact same playbook that has happened throughout huge portions of history, which is you get embroiled in a war. In order to win that war, you need manpower. And in order to get manpower, you need to extract it from the able-bodied men of your population. And the able-bodied men of your population don't want any part of it. And again, I'm not going to sit there and be like, it seems like a very Russian problem, but Ukraine had the exact same problem, where Zelensky had to fire every one of his military enlistment officers or supervisors of his military enlistment offices because they were taking millions of dollars in bribes to allow young men to avoid conscription. So this isn't like a Russia problem. This is inherent to governments. And it seems strange if there is a giant conspiracy to dispose of people. One, this is an incredibly inefficient method, right? If your goal was to, if there was a giant cabal, one, they wouldn't go to war with each other. They wouldn't sanction each other. They wouldn't try to arrest each other, which is all happening to Russians, Russian oligarchs. Russian oligarchs can't act as a cabal. What are the odds that global elite can also act as a cabal? And if their goal was to reduce the population, a war is a really inefficient way to do that, right? Instead, it would be much more efficient to just, reduce the fertility rate or something else comparably subtle.
Еще и в планах утилизировать как много больше народу. Это уже не скрывают. И все, кто на передовых, все это понимают. Да, конечно, ты меня не обрадовал. Я, честно тебе скажу, не подписываю контракт.
They're saying, she says, they're not hiding it anymore. All those on the front line, they all understand this. Of course, you haven't brought any good news. She says, I'm honestly trying to tell you, don't sign the contract, no matter how much they try, no matter what they say, F them. And this is actually not a bad strategy, right? Because here's the thing. There's a reason they want his signature on the contract. And there's a reason that they can't just forge it and send the guy to the front lines. So there's some sort of reason they want his ink on the contract, which is kind of bizarre, right? It implies the existence of a facsimile of a legal system, right? Where they have to meet certain requirements, and one of them is a signature on the contract. But again, why would you just not forge it? It's sort of bizarre. Again, it implies that somewhere that maybe that someone is requiring this, that there is some sort of, again, I would call it a facsimile of a legal system where you don't have actual representation, but you have technicalities, loopholes, legalese without the underlying fairness, right? Like a loophole is where you're guilty of something, but you're able to avoid punishment through a technicality, or you're owed something, or you're the aggrieved party, but you avoid responsibility through technicalities. But if you have a system that is all technicalities, then it may accidentally deliver a just outcome, but it's unlikely to do so. If it does so, it's just an accident, a bug of the system.
Как бы они ни заставляли, что бы они там ни говорили, пошли они на. А ты говорил, что по поводу демобилизации, уже приказ есть. Что, никого не демобилизовали? Вот вообще из своих знакомых, может, кто-нибудь.
Ooh, she said, you said something about a demobilization order, that there's already an order. She says, so have they demobilized anyone? Do you, maybe among your acquaintances? So she's asking, do you actually know anyone who's been demobilized? And guys, okay, this is just one of those things that, this is just some life advice. All right. And I know my audience skews older, and pop it into the comments because you're going to understand. If you're older, you'll know I'm right. There's a lot of what people say. They tell you, oh, my cousin's brother's mother's husband did this, or they say this, right? For me, the example I always use when I was in grad school, all of these grad students, none of whom were currently employed, except for me. I had like a business at the time. Anyway, it's not important. The point is, all of them were unemployed. None of them were working in the industries they wanted to, right? They went to grad school because they wanted to shift gears to a different industry. But the number of grad students who told you, let me tell you what it takes to get into consulting. Let me tell you what it takes to get into government. Let me tell you what they're looking for if you want to do X. And I'm like, and for a little while, I listened to them because they sounded really confident. But then, as I actually got out into the world, I realized they were totally bunk. And they would sit there and tell you fantastical things like, if you work in investment banking, they'll start you at $300,000 a year. Not true. Just a blatant lie. Oh, well, they'll see you have a graduate degree and they'll bring you in as a GS-14. Not true, guys. And it's the blind leading the blind. And so I say this, in your life, there's almost certainly some dude, right, who has these grandiose opinions and has no qualifications and no reason that they would know this information, right? This is like the other mechanic making $15 a year who's just like, well, let me tell you how to get rich with crypto. Bro, if the guy pulls up in a Ferrari and tells you he knows how to get rich in crypto because he's done it, maybe listen. But the guy shows you an account where he has $2 million of some exotic stock trading he's done, and he's made all this profit, then listen. But if they're going to tell you how to do something to get rich, or like the chronically single, oh my God, the chronically single guys who tell you how to get girls, bro, it's like, if I've never seen you with, I'm using this because I'm a straight dude. That's the example I know, but right. It's like, or, you know, your single friend who's giving you dating advice. It's like, listen, you should do the opposite of what that person says because they're failing at that thing, right? The point is that, right, he's suffering from the exact same thing, right? Everybody is around him who hasn't been demobilized is telling you that people are being demobilized. Like, if someone came to him and called him and was like, bro, I'm calling you from my home, I've been demobilized, then he should listen to that person. But you shouldn't listen to a bunch of mobilized people about how to get demobilized.
Слушай, Юр, я с Анькой тоже говорила по этому поводу. А может просто с кем-то договориться?
Interesting. This is the second time she says, listen, Yuri, I've talked to Anka about this. Maybe you could arrange something with someone. This is the second time we've heard them allude to the fact that they need to find some sort of fixer. She says, F it, it's like some officer, hint to him and pay him like $500,000. Screw it. I think this is really interesting because so what often happens in conflicts and in any environment, right? There's this first phase where things are chaos, where it's lawless, where there's no systems for doing anything. If you want to get something, you have to beg, borrow, steal, or purchase it. And slowly over time, though, what happens is systems for getting things done become formalized. And this happens through the official channel, right? So like, at the start of the war, there was, you know, the mobilization for Russia was chaos. And as the war went on, the system of identifying able-bodied men, drawing them into the military pipeline and training them has smoothed out. But a parallel system has also occurred. And that's the development of a black market or unofficial systems, right, that work the same way. And so initially it was like, how do you get out of the front lines? Nobody knew. But slowly over time, there's a system. And we're hearing more about these systems as more people understand that there's a protocol. You find an officer with the authority over assignment, sounds like, or someone with, some ability to assign troops to billets. You give that officer a sufficient amount of money. You ensure that you also pay a driver to take you from the front line. And then this officer makes it all happen. They take you out of the front lines. Maybe they mark you as WIA and non-fit for duty. Maybe they assign you to a non-existent unit, or they just list you as assigned, but you no-show, or they mark you as service complete, something. But the point is that it's a more formal system, and it seems like more widely known that this is the actual way you navigate. And again, as we've always talked about in this video, the reason European metropolitan or cosmopolitan Russians, right, who are from the eastern part of the country, St. Petersburg, Moscow, etc., they are going to have access to more of this information, right? Cosmopolitan people, they are a greater number of them are on the internet. They can access Russian language media, official media and social media. They're going to learn how these systems work first. And the last people to figure these systems out are going to be ethnic minorities, linguistic minorities, people from the rural regions where they don't have quite the same access to high levels of information. And this is a universal experience. Wherever the next war is, if there's a conscription program, it will follow the same playbook.
Ну, какому-то начальнику как-нибудь намекнуть, ну, заплатить ему до полляма с ним, зато домой отправиться. Почему ты так думаешь? Когда начнут заставлять подписывать контракт? Ну, ты скажи, во-первых, меня мобилизировали, и уже я здесь год, да, ты уже почти год в этом торчите.
Just telling them, well, first, tell them I've been mobilized, I've been here a year already.
А как же приказ о демобилизации?
I think she's feeding him lines to tell them. She says, what about the demobilization order?
Почему нами других?
Why don't they replace us with others?
Мы же тоже как бы люди, мы тоже устаем.
We're people too. We get tired too. Why do we get only a 2-week leave?
Что нам этот отпуск?
Yeah, when I was deployed, 2 weeks of leave was all you got. But there were some interesting caveats. First off, your deployment had an end date of 12 months. Second, the 2 week leave was actually guaranteed by the government. And so what that meant was the time it took you to get out of the war zone to your home of record didn't count. So my leave started the day I left Philadelphia International Airport, and the clocks ended on my 2 weeks. When I came back to Philadelphia International Airport, I think and I, signed in with, I think there was like some random NCO at the USO who was managing it. Right. So the point is that it's not a 2 week leave in a year combat deployment is not wild or unacceptably small. But when you're on an indefinite combat deployment, it's preposterous.
She's totally right. Your husband is going to be screwed over anyway. Again, now let's listen to another interception with civilian woman who's talking to a soldier, but you're just going to hear a woman talking because it's also a one-sided call.
Да, я уже слышала. Ну, тоже страшно. Молодой? 23? Жалко.
The civilian woman is saying, "Oh, I've heard already. It's scary. Young, just 23 years old. Poor thing. We're waiting for you to come so we can gather together."
А что у нас будет хорошего? Вот ждем, чтобы вы пришли или куда-нибудь уже что-нибудь с вами решилось. Да, хоть что-то решилось. И вчера Жорка еще говорит, а у меня на 30 сентября, говорит, повестка, говорит.
Okay. So this sounds like a grandma talking to like her friend. She says, at least something gets resolved. She said yesterday this woman's son got a draft notice for September 30th. And she reports saying, I don't care, get CATIA certificate, get the stuff about you enrolling in a college and go do that. Interesting. So it sounds like they're describing, again, a way out, which is to enroll in secondary education, which is a way to buy time, it sounds like, in the Russian system. Again, college-educated Russians are both economically more valuable, but also more likely to be well-connected and will make more of a stink if mistreated. So it makes sense in this sort of era to give an out for through college students. You also, of course, just want to protect your friends, so to speak, right? Decision makers in the Kremlin want to make sure that there is a legal loophole for their children to exit to stay out of this disaster. Again, and I'm dunking on the Russian military. They have it coming, but the U.S. and the Vietnam War, these are straight out of that playbook, straight out of it. Unpopular war, pretty pointless, no real interest at stake. Obviously the U.S. war crimes. I don't know. I'll be curious to know when the data comes out. It seems like the Russian troops are even more poorly trained than the U.S. troops in Vietnam. And it seems like they are even more poorly led. But the carve-outs are exactly the same. Carve-outs for college. Russia doesn't seem to have a carve-out for being a parent, but they should. Given that you don't want to mobilize men and then have their families starve, that's, again, a bad PR look. Says there's nothing to do as with Stas. On the contrary, you have to wait for Stas to come. Be careful. Don't just hold on, but take care of yourself. This is sound advice. Again, don't wait. Don't be passive. Okay, this is another one of those behavioral things, like a meta. And this grandma's giving real good advice, actually. And she's saying, when she says, don't just hold on, but take care of yourself, what she's describing is that systems are designed to encourage default behaviors, right? Like at the end of the day, my mortgage gets taken out every single month. It's on auto pay. All my bills do. It's made to be incredibly easy. But you know what? Well, I have it set up, but you know what you have to go in and do yourself is if you want to save money, right? You ever notice that? Saving money is something that nobody helps you set up. But getting your bills paid, paying somebody else, the system is easy, so easy to do, right? And the reason that is because that's what the powerful people that set up these systems want. That's the behavior they want. And most people are passive in the face of behaviors, in the face of challenges and choices. They default to passivity. And so what this grandma is saying is like, do not do that, because the Russian system wants to extract conscripts and put them on the front lines. So passivity is going to result in the Russian system delivering the outcome that it wants: warm bodies sent to the front lines with minimal training. And so you have to take action, just like you have to log into your bank account, set up an autosave that takes money out of your paycheck every month and puts it in checking, right? Puts it in your savings account. You have to do the same. So she's saying you have to do the same thing here. Don't wait for bad things to happen to you. Take initiative. Get your kid in college so that he can't get drafted. Get out of the country. Find the family doctor who's known him since he was a kid to sign off that his asthma's really bad as an adult. Take care of yourself. Take action to take care of yourself. Don't just let the system scoop you up and spit you out.
Я говорю, я вчера просто прочитала,
And this is just good life advice.
что Димона жена написала так в нашем чате, что это некуда погиб, мы все в шоке. Мы же никто не знали, она... Да, слышал, говорят.
That's a great idea to place her son in a college or university, because he'll receive at least 4 years of deferment from the military. Okay, that's it for now, guys. But before you go, please smash the like button, subscribe to my
Yeah, if you like his content, you should absolutely like it. You should subscribe to him. I'm already subscribed and I'm a member. You should too. Link is in the description. And you should like this video and subscribe to it. Thanks again. I'll see you guys in the next one.